Follow the conversation. This is Afternoon on the Dove.
Well, good afternoon and welcome to Afternoons on the Dove. I'm your host, Perry Atkinson, and today we are delighted to have back with us Carolyn Brent. She has an MBA and she's the author of a book that we got a lot of information out of, Why Wait? The Baby Boomer's Guide to Preparing Emotionally, Financially, and Legally for a Parent's Death. Now, this is a big topic, especially for baby boomers. 79 million baby boomers in the United States, and it's now estimated that 13 million of them are caring for elderly parents, with 25% of those living with the baby boomer in their home. And Carolyn has lived through this experience. She's now a consultant in this area, and her book is a tremendous resource. Let me encourage you to get a copy of it, especially if you are involved in this with a parent or you're about to be, and maybe even with some siblings, and just what should be done and how it should be handled. Get a copy of this book. And Carolyn, what a delight to have you back with us today.
I'm really honored to be here. Thank you, Perry, for the second time on your show.
Well, you are actually talking to us from a hotel room in Southern California because you had a book signing, and then you're heading back to the Bay Area. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Now, you have lived this story, and that's what got you into this. Tell us your story and why you found this to be such a need.
Well, you know, Perry, as we grow older, we think our parents are going to be the way that they've been our entire lives. And back in 1997, I experienced visiting my father, flying from California to Colorado to see Dad on just a normal routine visit. And I noticed, Perry, when I went to visit Dad, his home was at a disarray. There were clothes every place, the very foul odor in his home because of rotten food in the refrigerator, and Dad was just not clearly his immaculate, groomed self that I had known him to be. Plus, my father had lost a tremendous amount of weight, which was very concerning. So what I did, I had taken my father to the Veterans Administration Hospital to just have a routine check to make sure Dad was okay. And the doctor did a lot of testing and found that my father's hemoglobins were so low, he said, "Thank God you are your daddy's caregiver. He could have possibly died." And it shocked me, Perry. I looked at the doctor and I thought, well, first of all, I'm not my father's caregiver. I'm his loving daughter visiting Dad. Dad's surely going to be okay. Dad's not going to need a caregiver. That's what I thought. So, Perry, that was the beginning stages of identifying something, the telltale signs that something wasn't quite right with Dad.
Well, out of that, here you are several years later, and now you're involved in this, really as your calling and as your outreach in life to help people through this. The statistics that you sent to me, Carolyn, are quite staggering. 79 million baby boomers, and 13 million of them now are caring for parents inside the home. This is a big topic, and
yeah,
it begins to unravel a lot of issues, from finances to legal to powers of attorneys, dealing with siblings. Did you run into all of that?
I ran into every last drop of it, and that is what inspired me, and I will do this until I rest my eyes and I go home to be with God. And the reason why I say this, taking care of an elderly senior is a very difficult job. It's not like caring for a child. A child, Perry, when you're raising a child, we know that the child, and if they're healthy, they're going to get stronger, better, and eventually go to college, and then pretty soon they're out the door. With a sick elderly parent, today may be the best day that parent may ever have, just for that day. And then their health starts to decline regardless of whatever medications or agents are out there to help. It's basically putting a mask on the problem, because the problems such as dementia, there isn't a cure and is still there. And the statistics that I sent you, the 79 million baby boomers, and I really want to clarify what a baby boomer is. That's anyone born between 1946 and 1964. Those are officially the baby boomers. Mm-hmm. And the top of the baby boomers are 65 years of age. And this year, 2011, that was the most people on the planet that ever applied for Social Security, the top echelon of the baby boomers.
Yep, that's us.
Absolutely.
Okay, now, when did you realize that you were going to have to step in and be the caregiver?
I realized, Perry, from that very first visit, I became very, very concerned because what I ended up doing was cleaning my daddy's house. I bought a whole lot of TV dinners, and I had to show Dad, this is the way you put the TV dinner in a microwave. And, you know, and hopefully Dad can remember that. So I had my father evaluated, and the doctors evaluated him as the early stages of dementia. So what I did, Perry, I convinced my father, and it took 2 years, to come and live with me, live in my home in California, because I was traveling back and forth from California to Denver, Colorado. And in my case, there were at the time a total of 8 adult siblings. However, Perry, everybody was simply too busy to get involved with Dad's health. And also my siblings, at the time, they were in denial, because when it comes to dementia, the person at the early stages, they appear to be normal or fine. They really do appear, they go like kind of slip in and out. So apparently my siblings thought, oh, Dad's okay, you're overreacting. But I knew that I wasn't overreacting when Dad had flooded his basement because he had forgotten to turn the water off on his water hose. And it's like, Dad, I can't do this back and forth. You're coming to live with me. And Dad, I sold my father's home at the time, and I think it was in 1999. Dad received like $106,000 for the home. And Perry, I knew that I needed to get $106,000 to stretch over my father's lifetime. And Perry, that isn't any money. However, my siblings thought that was like, I mean, millions of dollars in their eyes. But one hospital visit, when a parent gets sick, that could wipe that out in one day.
Yeah. All right. Now, what I'm hearing you say is probably one of the biggest issues that people have to deal with, and that was that there was not unanimity, so to speak, between you and your siblings, and it ended up being quite a battle for you, didn't it?
Absolutely. I had cared for my dad for 12 solid years, being the only one. Dad lived with me. Then I had to do the private assistant living because Dad was getting lost. You name it, I went through it. And the only thing my siblings would say is, Carolyn, you're doing a good job. You don't have children. You're not married. You're doing a great job. But as soon as my siblings thought that Dad was dying because of an unexpected emergency, all of a sudden, Perry, my family wanted to get involved, and I found myself in 3 different jurisdictions being dragged through court. And what I mean by that, one sibling, one family member filed abuse charges against me for financial abuse and physical abuse. As soon as we got to court, the very first court, which, you know, it was all falsified information. My father's doctor was there. I had everybody that had ever helped care for my dad was there in court. And the sibling looked at the judge and said, oh, Your Honor, I drop all charges. Now, Perry, when a person drops all charges, there's nothing that you can do as the defendant except for walk out of court and go, I'm really mad at the sibling for doing that. But this sibling took it a step further. She dropped all charges. I walked out of court, and then my beautiful niece, which was her daughter, served me more papers with the same identical charges in a different county with a different judge. So can you imagine the hardship and the emotional turmoil it placed me under, because the sibling, she became automatic power of attorney through default because she was a family member, but she abused the right to become power of attorney. That was an abuse of the system. So that is why I'm working tirelessly right now as we speak with Congress to really close that gap, that family members cannot do that to one another when they think there is money to be had.
All right, so nowhere along the line here were you able to have a verifiable cognitive discussion with your dad to set things in place before all of this happened?
Actually, we had things in place, Perry. That's why I'm working with Congress once again. My father had everything in place with the Veterans Administration. And that was when he was cognitive and in his right mind. My father signed the papers with an agent from the government, and that was back in the mid-90s when Dad did that. But of course, I did not hold on to the paperwork. That was my fault and my problem. I actually lost the paperwork that that appointed me as power of attorney, fiduciary over my father financially, and also his medical person that he appointed for his medical affairs. And I lost the paperwork. So what had happened, because Dad and I did not know to take that same paperwork to the state, that was when the sibling was able to go through the state and say, well, there's no paperwork in order. She falsified all of the power of attorney. And my problem was, when I went to the VA to get the paperwork, it took an act of Congress to get the paperwork, and Jerry McNerney, our congressperson, got the paperwork a year and a half later from the veterans. So it took long to get the paperwork, the original forms.
Let me fast forward before we come back. Let's fast forward. What are you saying now for people that are heading down this road? Should they run out and get a trust?
You know, there's 3 documentations that I share with people that they need. They need a medical directive, number 1. Mm-hmm. They need a will and also a trust. And a trust is the only thing, and I really, really stress this. People think just, having a power of attorney and a will is the end all. Anyone can contest that. But when it comes to a trust, I like to describe it as a gift box. Everything you want, you put it in that trust, and when you die, nobody can contest, or if they do contest, it's going to go on on deaf ears of the judge, because that is not contestable, a trust. But you definitely need a medical directive, because if a person has a sudden, unexpected emergency, and I don't care if it's a traditionalist, a person before of 66 years and above, or a baby boomer, or a Generation X or a Generation Y, everybody needs to have something in place. If something happens to me, if I get into a sudden, unexpected emergency, what are my wishes? That's what a person needs to have, and a will it helps to support that, as far as the dual power of attorney for your financial affairs, for your medical affairs, and also the trust. And it doesn't have to be expensive. A person could go on LegalZoom.com and put these things in place on their own for literally $14, $15, or you could hire an attorney. And I would highly recommend get an attorney that is literally their specialty. I wouldn't get a real estate attorney to do your trust or your will.
I got to take a break here, but did you have a trust with your dad or not?
Actually, I had the trust. My father did not have the trust.
Okay, so you were dealing primarily with the Veterans Affairs as he gave his directives to them.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And that did set up a different scenario for you.
It did. It was a heartache, and I tell you, the only thing I have to share with people is put all the paperwork in order in federal, state, and county, and then that will help alleviate back end of life issues.
All right,
literally.
So, was part of his directive with the Veterans Administration giving you the power of attorney?
Absolutely, absolutely.
But that didn't hold up in court, though.
It didn't hold up in court because the judge said that they do not acknowledge the federal government, period. That's what she said. So that was just, I mean, I couldn't believe that. So the only reason why Dad and I did not go through the state, number one, we were not aware that we needed to put that in the state, but also, who would think that your family would do such a horrible thing as what this sister did to me? I mean, no one would think that.
All right,
so,
let me take a quick break. We'll be right back. We're delighted to have with us today Carolyn Brent. She's authored a book entitled Why Wait? The Baby Boomer's Guide to Preparing Emotionally, Financially, and Legally for a Parent's Death. This is a tremendous resource that sooner or later we end up dealing with these issues with family members, and she's gone through the storm and put it all down and hopefully saving you from going through the storm. We'll take a quick break and we'll be right back.
Follow the conversation. This is Afternoon on the Dove. Follow the conversation. This is Afternoon on the Dove.
Well, we're back with Carolyn Brent today. We have her back on the program because the topic is very, very important, and sooner or later affects all of us. And what do we do with an aging parent or relative, and how do we properly care for them and make sure all of the affairs are in order? Carolyn has authored a book that is a tremendous resource, and you may want to get a copy of it. It's called Why Wait? The Baby Boomer's Guide to Preparing Emotionally, Financially, and Legally for a Parent's Death. And she has lived through this with the passing of her own father and all of the issues that are involved with that. And let me encourage you to get a copy of the book. Carolyn, before we go too much further, where can they get a copy of this?
Barnes & Noble, Amazon. And by the way, Terry, I wanted to let you know that my book on November 15th, it went #1 on Amazon, which is, I mean, absolutely a blessing from God to have that many people to order my book on the 15th of November. So it's a #1 best-selling book for elder care and grieving section.
Congratulations. That's wonderful. Well, I want to come back to how difficult was it for your dad to accept the fact that it was time for him to leave his home and to go to your home?
You know, that is a phenomenal question because my father resisted. He resisted for 2 solid years. But once my father realized there was something, Terry, that just made my father one day decide, I want to go home with you. I was visiting Dad, and I was on my way to Florida to a national managers meeting, and I stopped in Lamar, Colorado to see Dad, and he had this little tiny suitcase packed when I went to visit him, and he said, I'm ready to go home with you. And I thought, oh my God, he's ready. I've been begging him for 2 years and now he's ready. I think the parents reach a point when they know that that something's not right. So it took two years. And he had the tiny little suitcase packed with just all of his vitamins because Dad loved herbs and vitamins, and that's all he had. So I canceled my trip to Florida and I flew my dad back to California with me, got him all ready, and I hired someone to come in and watch over him until I really managed my work schedule and having Dad there. But Dad lived.
At that point, Carolyn, your family was in agreement with this?
Well, they didn't say anything because they never really got involved with my dad. My father lived 200 miles south of Denver, Colorado. And at that time, I had 4 siblings that lived in Denver, Colorado, and there were 3 siblings that lived in California, including myself, that lived in California. So nobody got involved with Dad because they were simply too busy, and they did not want to have that crucial conversation because talking to Dad on the phone, they felt like, Dad's okay, Carolyn, you're overreacting, he's okay, he's okay. So once Dad moved, they didn't really say anything, but now looking back in retrospect, my family, I guess they felt a little insecure because I wanted to talk about the finances. I showed them the finances. They said, Carolyn, you handle it. You'll do a good job. No problem. But it really turned out to be about the financial standpoint towards the end. And we're talking about 12 years later.
How did you guard your heart from such greed within your family?
Actually, you can't. I did not guard my heart. That's why I fell apart at the end. And what I mean by falling apart, I ended up in the hospital. I thought I was having a heart attack, although it was nothing but, nerves and anxiety. I ended up, like just bleeding profusely from stress. I had a fibroid that just grew so big that I ignored. And now I'm a healthy person because I'm choosing to be healthy, and I've chosen to forgive my family, but I have nothing to do with them, and I've never really had what I thought was a family anyway, because there was never any cohesiveness in our family ever. So looking back in retrospect, yes, I'm family by blood, but we never participated as a family. My family was really just my dad.
Okay, now and I realize that's a very sad story and a very emotional one, and quite frankly, I think one that's probably repeated thousands of times, unfortunately. Yes. But could any of this civil rivalry between siblings been avoided?
Absolutely. And Perry, it has taken me to write my book and to do research to see where we could have avoided that. And what I mean by that, during the time when my family was going, "That a girl, Carolyn, you're doing a great job. You're blessed. God has anointed you to take care of Dad." That's when I should have had a sibling. It's called a sibling contract. I didn't know that a sibling contract even existed back then. And I discovered a lady by the name of Carolyn Rosenblatt in California when I was really looking for research. And I thought, a sibling contract, what is this? So I called her up and she shared it with me. She said, a sibling contract is when there's only one person in the family taking care of Mom and Dad. It protects that caregiver at the back end of caregiving when someone is dying. And that is what I really, really share with everyone, every place I go. If there's only one person, caregiver, protect yourself. You must protect yourself. I don't care how wonderful your family is. Protect yourself, because at the end of caregiving, you never know when a person smells, I call it blood money. You never know, who's going to come out the woodworks. Even people without siblings, I've heard stories where, as a matter of fact, I was at a book signing yesterday, and one of the ladies said that she was an only child, but her cousin actually came in and attacked her at the back end of caregiving. I mean, you just never know where it's going to come from.
All right, so what I'm hearing you say here, there's some really very important documents that people should line up as they begin to go down this road. One is a medical directive, two is a will, three is a trust, and then in this case, a sibling contract.
Absolutely. And a sibling contract is really something easy to do. It's not complicated at all. You could even do it yourself, Perry. And what I mean by that, if all the brothers and sisters says, Carolyn, we want you to take care of Dad, it's left up to that caregiver to put it in writing. He or she could write it on their own and literally put a contract. Well, the family has told me that I'm responsible for A, B, C, D.
Is that binding? Are they binding when you handwrite them yourself?
It's binding if you have it. I would actually, let me see, have it submitted in court. I would always have everything documented and recorded, period.
Now, you were trying to manage your dad's resources for his care, but then you were extracted from the equation in your story. So what happened to his resources? Was there enough money to the end?
Absolutely. My father, my dad raised me from the age of 12 on. My parents divorced, and I moved in with my dad because I wanted to move in with my father. So my father was a wonderful businessman, and he basically taught me how to manage money. And his whole thing was, you save, 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 you don't spend, 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 because he's a World War II person, or in a depression. So Dad really taught me how to respect dollars. So everything that Dad had, that $106,000, I used those dollars along with his Veterans Administration money benefits that he had, which was $1,500 a month, plus his Social Security, which was $700 a month. And then I would kick in the rest of the dollars in order to care for our father. So our dad lived in private assistant living the whole time I had him, period. And that's what really, really got me, because when my family decided to take me to court and do all these things, they ended up having to put him on welfare because they did not have any money to manage. They didn't have any money. And Dad didn't have any money because I had spent it all on my father, and I had been using 401ks, and I was going to take care of Dad regardless and never put him on any public assistance. That was what was in my mind. But my family felt that putting him on the state, which they had to apply for Medi-Cal, literally that's what they did with Dad. And that really, you have no idea how that hurts me even to this day, to know that they thought that was better.
All right. Now, I want to go back to the move from your father's home, where he was all those years, to your home, knowing that he was in a declining state. Would it had been better to just keep moving him right into a facility?
No, I love that question, because when a person has the early stages of dementia, it's so slight, Perry, until, they'll like forget the keys, or maybe they'll leave the water on too long. And I just thought Dad was lonely because he was living by himself. His second wife had died like a year prior. So I just felt, I continued to let Dad drive his car because Dad was fine at the time. But dementia, especially back then, there was only one drug on the market known as Aricept. So the doctors were trying to do a cocktail mixture of this, that, and the other to keep Dad stable. So I didn't want to take all of his independence away from him. And the only reason why, Perry, that Dad had to move into a facility is because I was working full-time. I had to work in order to support myself and to support my father. And Dad had gotten lost one time driving to the grocery store, which was 2 blocks away. When we found Dad like the next day, he was 250 miles away looking for my home. And that's when it dawned on me, in order to keep Dad safe, I've got to get 24-hour assistance to help Dad. So Dad had a little apartment with a little tiny microwave and a refrigerator, but Dad still lived in the same town that I lived in at the time. And I would see Dad, I would go visit him every day, I'd pick him up every day. He was still in my life, but I needed someone to manage him for that 8 hours that I had to go to work.
All right. Now, during the time when people are looking at the various documents that are needed, and let's just say they do it right. In other words, they didn't go through the nightmare you went with your dad having everything you supposedly thought was in order with the Veterans Administration. But let's suppose they have everything in order. They have the medical directive, they have the will, they have the trust. And in that, there's this thing called the power of attorney. And and that is an interesting document, because you never know when to exercise it. And I don't know if the elderly person knows when to yield to it. I mean, how do you deal with that?
That is really tough, and that is why I am working tirelessly with our U.S. Congress and our state government, because it's the misuse of a power of attorney that is really at someone's hand. So this is what I share with everyone. Every parent knows their own child. Their adult children, they know their children. And everyone that, like myself, I don't have any kids. I don't have adult kids. I don't have little kids. But I have really good friends, which I call my extended family. You have to appoint someone that you can say, I trust this person with my life. That's what, so we have to take responsibility for our own fate and for our own future, because a power of attorney, like there's a person that has power of attorney on me, just in case something happens to me, but that's a person I trust with my life. So if you trust that person with your life, and if they're a good person to put your best interests first, then there should not be a problem. Right, it's the misuse of a power of attorney.
All right, let me take a quick break here. Carolyn, I got one more time out. We'll be right back with Carolyn Brent today. She has authored an incredible resource for you. It's called Why Wait? The Baby Boomer's Guide to Preparing Emotionally, Financially, and Legally for a Parent's Death. And I tell you what, #1 bestseller now on Amazon, so check it out. And we'll be right back.
Follow the conversation. This is Afternoon on the Dove. Follow the conversation. This is Afternoon on the Dove.
Well, we're back, and again, let me just encourage you. This is a great resource. Carolyn Brent, she has her MBA. She's authored a book called Why Wait? The Baby Boomer's Guide to Preparing Emotionally, Financially, and Legally for a Parent's Death. There's a picture of it there on the screen for those of you watching on the DoveTV. It really is a complete handbook for family caregivers. And check it out on Amazon.com and other places, Barnes & Noble, and get a copy of it and have it for your resource. Carolyn, your story is fascinating and yet ever too common from some of the things that we hear. It's unfortunate that families get torn apart during this time. I wish it was avoidable, but it's just some cases it's not for a variety of reasons. But what I'm hearing you say here is the bottom line is, let's have this conversation now, Mom and Dad, so we don't have to deal with it when things start to get a little unclear. Is that what you're saying, obviously?
Absolutely. And the key thing is that I do believe that end-of-life issues can be avoided. I mean, I'm a strong believer in that, and that is pre-planning. Like I said, if every human being takes their own responsibility for just themselves, put their things in writing, then what is there to fight about when everything's documented properly? My whole goal is to close down the probate courts. I mean, it's just really, it doesn't make sense to me to go to probate court and families fighting for 17 years for the state and the attorneys to get the money anyway. It just does not make sense.
All right. And that's one of the benefits of having a trust, because then the estate doesn't go through probate.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Now, let me ask you this. As people progressed with your case, and you were somewhat ousted from your dad's care, were you ever reinstated?
Actually, I was reinstated at the very, very tail end. The last time we went to court, the judge basically gave my sister conservatorship because I did not fight it, did not want to fight it, and I could go. Now, I wanted to make a correction. My father is alive. Congressman Jerry McNerney sent me a letter October 14th letting me know that my dad's alive. The reason why I personally had to stop seeing my father, because the same sibling was doing things, because we're twins and people look twins, we all look the same. She was doing things and blaming me. So in order to save my father's life, his fate, and in order to save me, I had to stop seeing my dad so I would not get blamed for everything that this person was doing. I mean, it's a really sad story. There will be a movie about it, the whole bit, but it's a twin that did all this.
Wow. I'm sorry. I did not know that. I'm sorry for the mistake, but I'm glad to know your father's still alive. Is he cognitive?
No, my father is a vegetable, because when Dad had that sudden unexpected emergency in September 2008, it was September 19th, 2008, I'm taking my dad to what I thought was a routine doctor's visit, because Dad, I had noticed Dad was staggering. He started, having to wear diapers. And I thought, well, maybe they could fix that because I'm Dad's caregiver. And they found that my father had a massive, it was called massive hematoma, which is bleeding on the brain. And the doctor looked at me and said, we have one of two choices. We could pull your daddy's shunt, and a shunt is a tubing that was in his head because he had fallen from a run when he was like 75 years old. But anyway, they said we could pull the tubing and your father will live, but he will be a vegetable. Or if you don't pull the tubing, your dad will be dead possibly by tomorrow morning. I was faced with those two choices. So that is why it's imperative to have things in writing. My father did let me know his end-of-life wishes. He said that he never wanted to be resuscitated, but my father and I never discussed if he had an accident and had a shunt in his head, and I'm faced with a choice like this, which do I choose? So my father is a vegetable, but he is alive.
What a story. What do you think about the medical community earnestly caring for the elderly in this state?
That's going to be another book that I'm going to write. What I see, now this is just what I see, and this is what I've experienced. Unless the caregiver stays on top of the medical community, the parent will be just another person pushed in a corner, put on a lot of psychotropics or agents to keep them quiet while, they will go on routine as usual. So I do believe that it's left up to the adult sibling that's going to care for the parent. They have to literally stay on top of the medical community, literally 24 hours, 7 days a week. There's no break. That's why I let people know, being a caregiver, it is not an easy job. you have to stay on the healthcare professionals. And they are great, great people, but they're very, very busy.
Well, they're human. They make mistakes. And one of my biggest concerns is the amount of medications that elderlies can be on for a variety of reasons. At what point do we know that it's safe and it's really working?
That is why one must educate themselves. In my case with my dad, when Dad was jogging, he lived with me and he was jogging. I was out on a trip. And when he had fallen and he was in ER, the doctors put some stitches in his head and gave Dad some, ibuprofen and told me, oh, your father's going to be okay. But, Perry, my father had a cracked skull that went undiagnosed, and then we thought it was dementia, when, in fact, the cracked skull was part that was causing the dementia. I mean, the story goes on, but I talk about that in my book, and I always caution people, if your parent takes a fall, do not take the doctor's word when they say it's okay. Make sure you get, a CAT scan or whatever, like, just get everything checked to make sure that there are no cracks in skulls or bones, etc. And insist on that.
I guess this is a tough question for a lot of people. When is it, I think a lot of, especially Christians, will feel like that putting a elderly parent into a facility isn't the thing to do, that there is a moral responsibility through the ages that you take care of your family right up through the end. Did you struggle with that?
You know what? I tell you, Perry, absolutely. I wanted to keep my dad to the end, but this is the key. If families don't get together, one person cannot do it all. You cannot work a full-time job, take care of mom or dad may burn down your home or wander off. It always boils down to safety. So what gave me a little bit of peace of mind, because I literally cried when I had to put my dad in assistant living, which is totally different than a nursing home. Assistant living is like a tiny little apartment for the parent, but as soon as they open up the door, they have their, other people with tiny apartments, and then...
Oop, hopefully didn't lose you there. Did we have a little bit of a... We may have had a little bit of a Skype freeze on that. Let me just again encourage you to take a look at the book. We'll put it back up on the screen for you. It's called Why Wait? And it's the Baby Boomer's Guide to Preparing Emotionally, Financially, and Legally for a Parent's Death. It's a tremendous resource. And as Carolyn just informed us, it's now #1 under caregiving under Amazon. So you may want to check it out. It is a great resource. All of these issues that we've talked about are highlighted in the book. And let me encourage you to seriously consider these things, especially if you're currently involved in caring for a parent or a loved one now, an elderly loved one, or you're about ready to go down that road. Have this discussion. And I think anybody will tell you that one of the greatest things you can do is to get a trust going, get a medical directive, put together a will, and put together a trust. I know that Jim Smith, attorney in town, he's a believer, and that's what his whole ministry is now in doing that. And you can look him up in the phone book. I would encourage you to do that and walk yourself and your family and your siblings through this process. I think it is a stewardship issue. It's being prudent with resources and things that that God has provided. So, again, some of the documents you may want to look into. Medical directive. This is a tremendous document to have in place with a loved one, and for yourself, by the way. I think that what you do with that will spell out the care that you want and the desires that you want. If there's an accident or if there's where you have to be resuscitated and all that, it answers all those questions. I don't have that list in front of me, but it's called a medical directive. A will is certainly important. It manages your estate, but a will alone doesn't protect you from going through probate. You need a trust in place, and then you have trustees, and that way your estate has life beyond a will and your death. So you may want to check that out. And with an attorney, again, look up Jim Smith, attorney here in town. That's what he does, and they do an excellent job. And then the other document that we have looked into is called the sibling agreement. If you are dealing with a lot of members in one family concerning a loved one, this may be wise as well, and I'm sure an attorney can help you with that. So it's called Why Wait? The Baby Boomer's Guide to Preparing Emotionally, Financially, and Legally for a Parent's Death. Check it out at Amazon or any other place. Carolyn Brent is the person behind that. Sorry that we lost contact with her on our Skype hookup, but it is a tremendous resource. Have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow. Right. Afternoons on the Dove.